you are sitting comfy spot somewhere with a wee beverage to keep you hydrated and your brain is ready to engage. I'm Alice Sharp, your host for this week's TTS Talking Early Years podcast. I'm a teacher, an educator, conference speaker, and an author of a continuous professional development programme called Adventures with Alice. Throughout this series, we're exploring the magic of play-based learning in the early years. We're turning a lens on how this approach supports the development of key skills for our children and, of course, our staff too. I'll be talking to a number of educational experts as we aim to inspire you all every day for your work and to unlock the potential for learning in our lovely sector. Today, I am absolutely thrilled to introduce two fabulous ladies. Liz Ludden and Sue Egersdorff are today's guests. Can you imagine it, guys? Hello, ladies. How are you today?
Great, thank you.
I've just spent a few days with a folk band learning how to sing. They were teaching us how to sing. It was an amazing experience. 30 of us with the band. Also, they had with them singers who were their dad and their uncle. And they were folk singers and shanty singers and stuff as well. So the age range of that group, where I think the youngest was probably 30 and the oldest among us was 80. And the conversations we shared were just a dream. And the characters of the people that were on this retreat were just fabulous. And in fact, there was a lady who is an artist, and she's been commissioned to make a statue out of bronze of the two girls that wrote "Twinkle Twinkle Little Star." So it was just fascinating. We went and sang in the pub for 2 hours. We were joined by an Anglican priest who was in the pub and loads of the locals. And the whole experience lifted my spirits, not just for the 3 days I was there, but for the rest of the year. You know, I've just sung and sung and sung. The band are off to now play in Glastonbury, and I'm going to sing more on my webinars. You know, so, oh my goodness, guys. That experience of those mixed ages, you know, realistically, what do you think are the top takeaways from it? You know, why can you not live without it anymore? Why would you not shut it down and just open another nursery?
I think possibly because once you've done it and you see the benefits of it, you can't walk away. So because it feels so good, and we talk about feeling as a workforce, you know, that all these things are put upon us all of the time, and sometimes in early years it can be a bit of a depressing read, you know, that things are being done to us and reduced ratios and you know, poor wages and all, lack of resources, all of these things. And it actually does make you feel as if you are making a difference and that it doesn't feel like work. And that's what our team are saying, that they've come from other settings and it doesn't feel like work, because it is just like you go into somebody's home. So for us, every day can be totally different. So, you know, we call it knocking on. People may just knock on your door and they may say, have you got a cough suite? But they don't want a cough suite. They want a conversation. Yeah. And then that conversation will turn into maybe turn into a song, or maybe turn into, you know, them going back and bringing their budgie down. And, you know, it is just joyful. You know, it's something that I feel as if we've been lacking for a long time, that we've been so rigid, especially, you know, some of the things that we seem to have so many problems that we need to achieve. Our children aren't achieving in language, that we're told that the children that they're not resilient enough. And actually, children surprise us every day because they're showing us. So we're going back to the preamble. One of them said yesterday, we need to wait. And I said, why do we need to wait? Because we need to wait for Bill to catch up. Now, they'd noticed that we'd walked a little bit further and it was a slightly warmer day. And they'd noticed that he was struggling and that we needed to wait. Some of the adults hadn't noticed, but this 3-year-old had noticed that their friend was at the back and that wasn't right, and that they wanted to do that. And that's a real gift. And if that gift that we can give to our children, if that takes them right the way through their life, then that's a gift of empathy. And we talk about school readiness, and that is ready. You know, that's ready for society. We're not ready for school. We're getting them ready for society.
To have a life.
All of those things.
I think the other thing is all of us as humans need to belong to something and feel that we belong. It kind of anchors us and grounds us. And what we were seeing is that our young families were quite isolated as older people, really.
Yeah.
And that they had this real urge to belong to something, to feel that, you know, if they weren't there, they'd be missed. And that's a really important point. If you're not there, we actually missed you, not, you know, your presence. So what we were seeing, or what we think we see in services, is this transactional model, which is an economic model of, I will, you know, you pay me this and I'll do this for you. That's very strong in adult social care and is a childcare thing, really, the economics of it.
Yeah.
And really, we understand that, but it's got to be more. If we're going to transform learning opportunities for children, you know, we really need to strengthen this kind of capacity to act, to do something different. And we felt that it's kind of given Liz and I a freedom to act as leaders, to, you know, put our money where our mouth is and say, we're trying this. We've got lots of things wrong, but we're learning what's right. And that is really pushing us on, because we are seeing such impacts in children's learning and family, kind of sense of family calmness. So parents are responding to their children in different ways, which means that you're extending home learning in ways that, you know, you don't know where your ripple ends. And that feels very exciting to us.
And it's very different to sending a pack home for home parenting links, isn't it? You're sending them home with memories that they can share, and conversations that they've had, and you know, again, that band that we were away with, the Unthanks they're called, and the two girls are not trained in any way, and when I was talking to one of them about, you know, why do you sing? Why did you become a band? And well, first of all, they said to get into festivals free, but then she said, because it was our way of life. It wasn't a hobby. They're not trained. She said, we just sing. I said, but what do you mean? She says, well, my dad sang when he cut the vegetables, and my mum sang when she dug the garden, and we sang when we walked to school, and we just sing. And she says, so it couldn't not be a part of who we are. And that, again, is what I think we're missing from not having extended generations around us. So you seem to be able to access that, you know, and I love that both of you have convinced me that you're disruptors. You're disruptors in, you know, deciding to disrupt yourself in what is the norm in our sector, because you have to find solutions, or we have to find solutions, not just you. And I love the word freedom that you use there as well, both of you. So I guess for any of our listeners now who are eager to start on this journey, and they don't have access to the big experience that you have, or the big charity that you have set up, you know, how can you help them facilitate this in even a small way, guys?
I'd say go back to find your tribe. So find somebody who wants to do it just as much as you do. So we're and part of our Born for Life group, one of our friends in that group, they've found a care home where someone has got exactly the same values as them, who want to do it, because there are people out there that want to do it. And find someone who shares your passion. You know, we're very, very lucky that Belong share the same vision and values as us. So just find your tribe, find somebody who wants to do it, because they're out there. People who work in care do want to work in a different way as well, because we're both undervalued sectors.
Yeah.
And we're both, you know, let's be honest, neither of us are in it for the money. You know, people who work in care aren't, people who work in early years. I think we all do it from the heart. So find someone who wants to do it and who is as committed as you are, and they're out there.
I think it's also really reassuring. Older people are incredibly reassuring to be around. They make you feel safe. So for our young team, when they're having a challenging day, perhaps with the children, and an older person notices and says, "Don't worry, Charlotte," puts their arm around her, tomorrow's another day. That's incredibly reassuring as a practitioner that you're okay and that you're doing okay. So it's so hard now to be working in early years, and it feels like sometimes it's a thankless thing. But what we get are all of these people that are thanking us all the time. So it gives you a really warm feeling that makes you want to do more. And that's what education should be about, us wanting to take the next step, do more, be more exciting. And it's kind of really invigorating.
And you mentioned, guys, the transactional model and I guess economics. When Liz, you picked up on the finances of the care sector and the childcare sector, and it's not about financial reward. And Jim Heckman, the Nobel Prize winner of economics, with the Heckman curve, all of that science proves that the more we invest in our early years, the less we will have to invest as we go up. And then it means that the care sector can have more investment than they have as well. So it just makes sense, complete sense, to look at it from an economic advantage actually to society to have this kind of model of practice.
Yeah. At both ends, because obviously many of us are getting older, that demographic is increasing. So we need our older people to stay well for longer.
Yeah.
And this is a preventative strategy that enables them to stay well. So it's a win-win. But I think the biggest win is understanding that, the biggest thing that helps children to succeed is empathy. Their ability to understand and demonstrate empathy. And, I think the biggest thing this has taught us both really is that, this is a great way of teaching empathy and helping children to allow their natural kind of caring side to come out.
Yeah. And there is a lot of research, again, I can't think who the researchers are, I can't quote them at the moment, but there's been loads of it, to say that if we don't teach or instill empathy by the age they're 3, it's really difficult to then instill it after they're 3. I mean, obviously we can't stop trying, but the reality is that in the first 3 years of life, embedding empathy and empathetic responses in our children are vital. So you've found a model that will not even, we don't have to do in the moment planner or any kind of planning, it will just take place. And that's huge, guys, huge.
I think as well for people who might be thinking about starting or are already on their journey, I think maybe think beyond the care home, because there are other groups out there that are already intergenerational, so your singing group or your Chinese group. There are groups out there that will want to join you. So, they may be part of your tribe. It may not be the care home, because that may not be your way in, because there are barriers taking children in or the care home coming out, because there are challenges both ways. So it might be another group. And just look in your own community and find out what's in your community and what works for you, rather than look at a different model. As you say, we can't replicate Reggio in the same way that they do it. So just look for where you are and what works for yours, and what your issues are and what the group's issues are, because together is strength.
Yeah. And so, guys, what's your dream? What next? Where's your next twig of the path?
Oh, where do we start?
I think it's really interesting. I mean, from a kind of political side, it would be to really get policymakers interested in this. So that's happening in Scotland. The Scottish government is funding this work. Northern Ireland is funding it. Wales is really interested in it. We haven't quite got there in England yet. So at a political level, we want to do a bit of, banging on doors. But I think it's not about replicating, doing more of this ourselves. It's just about enabling other people, you know, perhaps sharing some of the ideas that make people make a little start, you know, and get the joy and the satisfaction and, you know, the impact on learning that we're seeing, just get that spreading out a little bit more. So just giving some confidence, really. Because we haven't got it all right, but
No.
at least, you know, we're building a group that we can talk to each other and, you know, push ideas around, really.
Right, I mean, I've got a couple of documents. I don't know why I'm holding them up, because we're doing that. There's an intergenerational guide in early learning and childcare, bringing generations together. There's lots of documents now that are starting to, and I'm assuming that because you're doing action research with the universities, that you will start to publish all of that kind of,
Yeah.
or bits and pieces of your work, which will enable us then to be supported as a sector to maybe journey forward with anything that we want to facilitate in this kind of model, if you like.
Yeah. I think the issue is about gathering data.
Yeah.
You know, and this is the hard bit. And, you know, we've got some wonderful stories, which we've shared some of them today, but they're not enough.
No.
So if we are going to be politically minded, we have to prove that this works. So we are quite serious now about working with higher education about gathering that data and information. That is what other kind of policymakers and system changers need to see. So we do have to get serious about that side of things, which means that everybody working in this, any little bit of data helps to grow the story.
Yeah.
So, you know, if we just spin on this sixpence of just doing lovely things, we'll still be spinning on this same sixpence in 10 years' time.
Yeah.
So if we really want to influence change, we have to be serious about, you know, policy, structure, process. So that's where we're talking about going deeper, so that we can start to put together frameworks where we can easily collect that kind of information, so that we can tell our story with, you know, strength. To people that will have to listen then, because we'll have the information and the data, which we haven't got now.
Yeah, and I think I think it was Liz earlier on that said, you know, that you have to be committed to doing this. It can't be that you're just doing it to tick a box. It needs to come from your heart. I think you used that word yourself, Liz, that, you know, we want to activate the children and the older people's hearts to be emotionally connected to the experiences they're sharing together. But it's really important that we take on a project like this, and the heart is at the back of it, and it's based on some kind of solid foundation of theoretical principles and values that are shared, in order for it to be a success. Because only the successful data will help build the story bigger and make the, you know, to become a change maker, you need to have a really robust underpinning foundation for yourself. Okay, so top 2 tips if I want to go to approach a partner that I think has got the same value principles as me. What would be your top 2 tips, Sue?
I think probably the first one is be clear that, you know, what you're trying to achieve from doing this. Be really honest with yourself. What do you want out of it for your setting? But equally, be prepared to think a little bit more widely about, what does this care home manager need me to help her or him with? So what are her issues or his issues that I can help with?
Yeah.
So rather than being very narrow about it's just my children, try and see the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And then remember that, you know, sometimes support for early years comes from places you haven't looked before. And older people are incredible champions for babies and children. And we had the DFE come round a few months ago, and we were trying to convince them about how great this was. We just set the old folk on them, and they basically were desperate to leave because the old people were just giving them so much. They were like, we can't take on anymore, we've heard it all. But let old people be leaders, let children and old people lead, and be, in Vygotsky's terms, be the scaffolder of that, and be prepared to take a risk of, you don't know where it's going to go, but just let it go and it will go to a good place.
So that's Sue said the bigger picture, to think about the bigger picture and look at other options out with our sector. And Liz, what are your 2 top tips?
I'd say be brave. Speak to people that you've never spoken to before, because you don't know where that's going to lead you. And also be prepared to take a risk that, as Sue says, older people and families are absolute champions of this approach. And so that even though you think that something is impossible, it isn't. It's not impossible to take 28 people on a bramble. It's not impossible to allow a 97-year-old lady to throw a snowball. These things are not impossible. It's just a different way of thinking about it, and just expect joy. I know that's 3. Just expect joy and be prepared.
So Liz's 2 top tips are to be brave, and to prepare to take risk. But you said and prepare for the joy, and that's one thing I would like to thank both of you for, is bringing joy to my life today. Because it has just been joyful speaking to you, and hearing your inspirational motivation, guys, to do what you're doing. Because I absolutely know that you're not telling us the whole picture of the challenges and the barriers and the fights and the arguments and the pushing and the shoving that you've had to do to get to where you're at. I can't imagine what that narrative looks like. And I'm glad we've not shared it today, because it's about joy today. But it's there, and it's there. But what you've convinced me of, and I'm sure every listener of, is that it's worth it. It's worth the fighting down and breaking down those barriers, and to be brave. So thank you so much for that lovely, inspirational window into something that's a wee bit different. It's a bit out there. You're agitating the sector and making us think of solutions that are a bit different, but they sound absolutely amazing. So thank you both so much.
Oh,
thank you for having us.
So I would love to say a huge thank you to our guests for joining us today and providing us with such valuable insights. You've been listening to the TTS Talking Early Years podcast with me, Alice Sharp, and the amazing Liz Ludden and fabulous Sue Egersdorff. Thank you, ladies, for joining us. It has just been joyous. I think that's the word for today. If you've been inspired by our conversations today, don't forget you can sign up via the link in our episode notes to be the first to hear about future episodes and access exclusive follow-up content. Oh my goodness me. There are trillions of ideas for your settings and Pinterest boards to shop resources relevant to the topics that's been discussed today and throughout our podcast episodes.